and on behalf of the ADDitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD experts presentation titled How to Combat Procrastination in the New Year. Leading today's presentation is Dr. Michele Novotni. Dr. Novotni is an internationally recognized expert and thought leader in the field of ADHD. She is the former president of the Attention Deficit Disorder Association, a psychologist, coach, and parent of a young adult with ADHD. She's the author of What Does Everyone Else Know That I Don't? And Adult ADHD. Visit her website, www.michelenovotni.com, to learn more. Today's webinar will discuss why those of us with ADHD struggle with putting off difficult or mundane tasks, even when deadlines are looming. We know that overwhelm, distractions, and the fear of not knowing how to do something might keep you off target, but stay tuned. Today's expert will offer proven strategies to help you accomplish your goals this year. We'd like to begin today's webinar by asking this poll question to our live audience. Which of the following strategies have you tried to combat procrastination? Please select your answers and comment in the text box under the video player to tell us why your strategies have worked or fell apart. You'll see the poll results when you submit your response. And while you're doing that, I'll point out that live participants may submit questions anytime during the live event. To download the slides, click on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. If you're interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you'll receive about an hour after the live broadcast. A transcript of today's event will be made available in the coming week. If you're listening in replay or podcast mode, visit ADDitudeMag.com and search Podcast 436 to access the slides, the webinar replay, the Certificate of Attendance option, and the webinar transcript. And if you support the work we're doing here at ADDitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit ADDitudeMag.com/subscribe and sign up for ADDitude Magazine. Our latest issue is full of great advice and tips like 5 tidy kitchen secrets, an expert guide for those of us just diagnosed with ADHD at older ages, and research involving the link between headaches and ADHD. Subscribe today for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. So without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Michele Novotni. Thank you so much for joining us today and leading this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to this webinar, and hopefully at the end of this, you will have some tools to help avoid procrastination. It is a battle. So I wanted to start with talking about what the definition of procrastination officially is. So the official definition is to put something off that should be done. So I think most of you probably are pretty familiar with that. And then I just had a random fact. The first time the term procrastination was ever used was way back in 1588. So that's the first documented term. So in case you struggle with procrastination, you're not alone. It's been going on for a really long time. The bottom line is, and again, this is common sense, not rocket scientists kind of stuff. Individuals generally want to avoid something unpleasant, boring, non-preferred, or difficult. Individuals generally prefer to do something pleasant, interesting, exciting, preferred, and easy. So that's the basic starting point for everyone. And so it's basically a battle between your intentions, what it is you want to do, and then your actions, what it is you actually choose to do. Unfortunately, this involves your prefrontal cortex, which is going to be the front part of your brain, which is the detailed linear planning part, and the limbic system, which is in the back, and I have a brain picture coming up, which is the pleasure part of your brain that wants to do something fun. And then you always have the battle of what you need to do and what you'd rather do. So that is what we are fighting when we are struggling with procrastination. Here's where ADHD comes into play. ADHD in general involves challenges to self-regulation, time management, impulsivity, organization, and all those things are in the prefrontal cortex. So when we're talking about procrastination, and we were talking in the last slide, and I'll pop back, the battle between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, those with ADHD have a challenge because the front part of your brain, which houses all those important tasks, is also the part that is really struggling when you have ADHD. So not only do you have the ancient struggle of procrastination, it's amplified because the tools you have in your working brain are the ones that are more challenged. So we need some tools to help. The first thing is to understand there's different reasons why people may procrastinate. And um, these are a couple of the ones that in my private practice I encounter a lot. The first one, and again, we're going to talk about strategies for each of these as we go on. The first one is overwhelm. Some people see a task, it looks like a humongous mountain, have no idea where to start, what to do with it, and you're just so overwhelmed, you're just like, I'm not going to deal with this today. Um, Another reason why people may procrastinate is you don't know actually how to do something. There's a part of it you don't know how to do, there's a piece of information you don't know how to get, and so it's a roadblock stopping you from proceeding. Uh, Here's a fun one for people with ADHD in particular. We have a short-term versus a long-term focus. Most people tend to procrastinate long-term kind of things that are going to take a while. Short-term things are more fun, they're quick, they're easy. Most of us tend to do those much more readily than a big, boring long-term one. Also, we have distractions can come into play that help you procrastinate. If there's something lurking in your home or in your office that you'd rather do, or the phone, oh my goodness, the phone. We'll talk about that too. Distractions can lure you off. And again, for those with ADHD, those are extra exciting for an ADHD brain. So distractions can really get in the way. We also have the fact that a lot of people feel that they work best under pressure. So once there's a crisis or something they must respond to, they seem to do better. And so they sort of wait for the last minute, which sometimes can backfire, of course. And it's an awful way to live all the time. But there are advantages to that, and we'll talk about that. And then we have negative self-talk. What you tell yourself really matters. And as a cognitive behavioral psychologist, and when we use coaching, what you tell yourself can have a big impact. If you're telling yourself this is going to take forever, this is hard, I'm never going to get it right, it's hard to get excited about doing it. So you're sort of setting yourself up for no success by some of the messages that you give yourself. So we're going to dissect each of these and perhaps trade up to some new fancy tools instead of some of the ones you may have been using that aren't working well for you. And again, if you can fill out the survey they have, be interesting to hear what tools do you use, what are some of your better strategies, and we'll have results of the survey at the end. So I'm going to start with the first one, overwhelm. Overwhelm is when something looks so huge, it's like, why even start? Um, I keep on thinking of this old movie, What About Bob? I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, the part of him dealing with overwhelm is pretty cute. And the basic idea was that he he hounds this poor psychiatrist, but he took away a key nugget, and the key nugget was baby steps. Do something super small. Take a tiny step, and then you can accomplish something bigger. And anytime you research procrastination, one of the top strategies is always make it small. break it into a small step and take baby steps. So for those of you that are visual and visual kind of cues help you, you might want to put in a little bit of the movie and watch Bob with his baby steps. It might help you remember to break your task down into baby steps too. Um, there's also a Chinese proverb that says a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So again, I actually had the pleasure to be in China and see the Great Wall, massive. But it did begin with laying the first stone, and then another, and then another, and then another. And this major wall is finally completed. But again, it begins with very small steps. So the message behind the proverb is that even the longest, most difficult ventures begin with beginning, begin with a single first step. So one of the tools that helps a lot of my coaching clients would be to just begin whatever it is you're putting off. Set a timer for something teeny, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and work on the task for that long. And then if you prefer to keep going, you can. But if you did the 3 to 5 minutes, jump up and down, congratulate yourself, give yourself a star, a sticker, but be excited that you actually started. And sometimes starting can be as simple as just setting up the materials you need to do the task. So that pre-work also counts. But try something as tiny as 3 to 5 minutes, and you'll be amazed at what happens once you start. So I'm going to give you an example. Because it's the beginning of the year right now while we're doing this, taxes may be on somebody's mind, or if you're a super duper procrastinator, it probably hasn't occurred to you yet that April is coming. So it would be good to break taxes down. Like some of my clients would say, I'm going to do my taxes on time this year, and that's their goal. However, you're not going to sit down and do all of your taxes usually in one swoop. So if we're taking baby steps, the first baby step might be to set up a collection spot, because in the mail is going to be coming, or in the email, a lot of materials you're going to need. So maybe just designate a spot to collect info and congratulate yourself, because that's a step. You may want to chunk the task and do another small step. Maybe go to an institution like your bank and download the form that you need for your taxes. So again, break a task down into the smallest possible step, and then ask yourself if there's something even smaller you could do, just to get momentum going. Because I guess in physics, they say a thing in motion continues, but the hardest part is like from stopping to starting. So the main takeaway for overwhelm is going to be break it down until you're no longer overwhelmed. Also, say there's a work example. A number of my clients have monthly reports they have to do, and that just feels overwhelming to a number of them. Some of my clients are even surprised that the monthly reports due on a regular basis. So we've had to set up some systems. So the important part would be, let's break it down into what are the actual components of the report. What is it that's actually required? And then try to create a template so that you're just filling in blanks instead of creating something new. I find that many with ADHD create something new each and every time instead of relying on using something that already works or something they already did. You don't have to create something new each and every time. You could use an old report as a framework to insert information. You also could put entries into your calendar, whether it's digital or physical, as an event to work on it. Because if you don't block out time for tasks, it's really hard to make time for a task. You're going to find other things jumping into that space. Some people, even like when they go to work, don't check their email first thing, unless they sometimes have meetings that they need to respond to last minute. But they find that if they do what they wanted to do first, then they were better set up before other less important things start pulling them away. You also might need to create a system to capture the information you need. And again, that could be one step. How are you going to capture what it is you need to get those done so that you're not procrastinating and turning in reports 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later? Say we're talking about housework, same thing. Your goal might be you want to keep a clean house. But what exactly does that mean? So you might want to break that down. Monday, you might want to do your laundry. Tuesday, dust. Wednesday, do the floors. Thursday, pick up everything. Friday, do bathrooms. Saturday, clean the kitchen. Sunday, take a break. But again, start to put it in a chunk so that it's not overwhelming. A house is big, so break it into small steps so that it's less overwhelming. There's some really nice online resources to help you fight overwhelm. I just pulled out a couple. Say you wanted to clean the house. There's flylady.net. She's been around for a while, but she does a wonderful job of breaking down household tasks and, setting up systems to do things. And she makes it fun too. But she just starts with something as simple as clean the kitchen sink. So that's her first one. I know there was somebody who was in the military and his thing was make the bed. Just do one thing. The bed takes up a lot of space. Whether you just put a comforter over it or whatever, once that's done, the rest doesn't look so bad. So again, there's a lot of online resources. Suppose you're overwhelmed by getting dressed in the morning and finding something to wear. There's a website, Style by Color, that actually helps you pick 27 items to wear each season. And they do it by your body type and your style and what's trending if you care. And it gives you, it's almost like Garanimals, where you have a whole lot of mixes and matches, and basically everything's figured out for you. So once a season, you get this system that comes in. It tells you what your colors are, how many pairs of pants you need, how many tops you need, how many vests you need, or how many jackets you need. You set it up and you're done. And you don't have to only have 27 hangers, but it can cut it down so that it's not so overwhelming to look at a whole pile of things. So again, there are some nice online resources. And if you have any others, maybe you can shoot those in the chat and they can share those later too. All right. One of the second reasons I mentioned that we might procrastinate would be we don't know how to do something. We don't know how to proceed. So we need a plan to acquire the needed information. Or you might want to see if you could outsource, barter, or trade for it. So think about, who do you know that actually knows how to do whatever it is you're stuck on, or where can you find the information? Is it something you can find on a YouTube video? Is it something you can Google? Is it something that you can talk to somebody who works near you? Is it somebody who's a parent who's done something before? So if you're stuck on the process, you don't have to stay stuck. Just figure out, who do you know or where can you find the information, and go for it. And if it's something that's not in your skill set and it's difficult for you, you may want to consider swapping. I know I ran a group one time and there was a couple that was super good on the computer, but they could not figure out how to organize a garage or their kitchen or anything. And another person is like, well, I can't do anything with the computer, but I'm pretty good about putting like things together. What if we swap? So that made both people incredibly happy, because the person that did computers, and the person that could put things together did that. So again, you could always hire a professional organizer. You could work with a coach who could help you come up with your steps to proceed, or you may have somebody who's willing to barter or trade to do something that you don't know. But if you don't know, just staying stuck in don't know isn't going to help you know any better. So figure out a plan to get the info you need. Now, this one's a little trickier. The short-term focus versus the long-term focus. Again, most things you procrastinate on are going to be long-term, bigger projects. Short-term are more fun. So to keep you on track with a long-term focus, it's going to be important for you to remember your why. Why is it important to do this task? Why did you even put it on your list to start with? Or why did somebody else put it on your list to start with? And what's the cost of not completing the task? And how much does it weigh on you to be walking around knowing you should be doing it and you're not? And then you might want to flip to the positive. How would it feel to have that one done? To have that one finished off your list? What would that feel like? So somehow, some way, hold your why in front of you. Again, many people with ADHD are very visual, so a visual cues might help. I've had people write on their mirror. I've had people put sticky notes all over their computers, make it your screensaver on your phone. Some people get more elaborate and do vision boards. Some do physical vision boards where they cut out different graphics that remind them of what they want to do. Some do a vision board on the computer. Again, put something out there that helps you remember why you want to do or why you need to do the thing that you're procrastinating on. So again, consequences of not doing it can help, and how you feel when it's finished might help. Another block to doing something in the category of distractions. And again, unfortunately, distractions are a problem for everyone. For ADHD, distractions can really be a big problem because it's hard enough to get started the first time. And then if you're being distracted, that can make it worse. A lot of people with ADHD are actually liking working at home because they don't have everybody stopping to talk to them for just a minute. And so they don't have people walking by. They don't have people just talking because they're there. Some people find working at home to be awful because they see a pile of laundry, they see some bills, they hear somebody working on the yard. So again, I don't know what distracts you, but it's important for you to know what distracts you. Because with ADHD in particular, that's going to make it hard to keep working on a task or to even get started with a task. If noise, for instance, distracts you, they make some great noise cancellation headsets that block out a lot of noise. Also, there's a website called focusatwill.com, and they have music. They actually worked with neurologists to find music that actually helps your brain settle and block out distractions while you work. So they have different kind of like Renaissance music and classical music, and you pick your music you like, and then if you're working with that, that seems to occupy your brain so that you can focus better on the task at hand. There's also a lot of noise apps, white noise, purple noise, etc. So you can check and see if any of the apps might help you block out the noises that are stopping you from doing your task. The phone, the phone, the phone, the phone. Yeah, turn it off. Turn it off. Turn alerts off. Again, if your phone rings, you're going to look. If it pings, you're going to look. And once you look, it's harder for you to get back on track. And if you're checking your phone, then it's going to come up with some things you probably would prefer to do. So maybe put your phone in a different room. But again, try not to have your phone near you while you're trying to do an important task. Social media, your computer. Many of the tasks, for distractions, the good, we have a cement truck outside. Nice. All right, so for social media, if you're working on your computer, you're going to find that, again, if something pings up, you might want to check something. there's apps that can actually block social media for a period of time while you're working on a task. For instance, there's an app called Freedom. Freedom blocks noises. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the trucks. Freedom blocks any of the social media accounts until you hit set that you can use it again. So you could say, like, for the next 2 hours, all my social media accounts aren't going to be working. There's also an app blocker. It's called App Blocker. There's one called, I think it's like the Destroyer, that is even tougher. Most of those, if you really had to get back on, you could, but they make it difficult. So again, if you find that you're being lulled away and not working on what you want to work on, try using some apps like those or those. Okay, some more distraction blockers. Relocate. Go somewhere else to work. So if you're distracted at home, maybe go to a coffee shop. Now, for some people, a coffee shop would be a living hell because of all the noise, but some people with ADHD actually do better with the din of all that stuff. So you might find a place like that to work. I had one client who actually just went in his car. I had another one who went into the bathroom at work, another one that went into a conference room at work, libraries. So again, if you're distracted in a setting, maybe pick another setting and make a deal with yourself to stay there until you did the one chunk of the project. A nice coping strategy that we use a lot is called body double. And that's when you work with someone who's nearby who is going to redirect you back to the task at hand if you go off task. You can do this physically or you could do this virtually. I still remember my one client had an important project he had to do. So he actually camped out in my office in our conference room. And I would check on him in between clients to make sure he was still okay. But our secretary actually redirected him back on task a couple times. I still remember Mary Ann had seen my guy starting to leave and go in the room getting something. And she said, "Aren't you one of Michelle's people? Aren't you supposed to be in the conference room?" And he went, "Yes, ma'am." He turned around and went back and was working on it. But again, he asked for that. That was part of the project. You don't do that to somebody. You do that with someone. Again, virtually, as I coach people, sometimes I check in at designated times and they agree to send me copies of the work or let me know where they are. And then I ask them if, I don't hear from you, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to send you a question mark? Do you want me to send you a what's up? How do you want me to respond to help you stay on track? So again, just knowing that somebody else is going to be there can help. Say you made a New Year's goal to exercise and you're finding it hard to go to the gym. What if you had a neighbor or a friend who came back for you and the two of you would go together? Again, that's a nice example of a body double. Or if you wanted to take a walk during your lunch break at work, if you do it with somebody, you're more likely to actually, one, get started and two, follow through. Also, we need to pay attention to what your best times are. Some people work better in the morning, some people work better at night. So if you're procrastinating on something you find difficult, you may want to try to do it during your prime time. And again, if you pay attention to yourself or ask somebody, you'll generally pretty quickly come to find, do you work best in the morning? Do you work best in the afternoon? Do you work best at night? So the important thing would be to try to do whatever it is you're procrastinating with during your best time, which can give you an advantage. There's also a lot of research on the efficacy of exercise in activating an ADHD brain. Actually, any brain, but especially for those with ADHD. So again, if you're procrastinating and not doing something, you may want to exercise first and then immediately after exercising, start to work on your project when your brain is most lit up and ready to go. Some people exercise, then they drive back and then they shower. And by then, your best time has been wasted doing things like getting dressed and showering, where you could have been using it to do whatever it is you're procrastinating. So again, look for optimal time. Also, if you use medication, you may want to do the things you were procrastinating with during the time you're covered. So again, if you're not covered at night and you're trying to do a task that you don't prefer, that you're having a hard time with, you might want to try doing it earlier in the day while you're still covered. Oh, let me go back. There's one more that's interesting too, is you may want to do something like something fun before you start to help minimize distractions too. So if you're a dancer, for instance, you may want to dance to music or do a Zumba thing, um, and do something exciting to help light your brain up and then do the non-preferred task. Again, that's the opposite of behavior management, but with ADHD, doing something you enjoy first does help you block out things and work on something you don't prefer. So again, it's almost, well, it is the opposite. All right, here we're coming to the one procrastination piece that actually can work to your advantage. Pressure or crises. Many clients wait till the last possible moment, and then they go, ah! And then oftentimes they can pull something out. It's not the best work they could have done, but oftentimes they do jump to get it done. There is actually research that, again, if you have a crisis, your brain does respond. It gets excited in this alarm state, and the alarm state actually does improve your attention and your ability to focus. However, it's pretty costly emotionally and physically to wait for that crisis point. So we'll talk about a couple ways to make that work for you. But again, pressure and crisis isn't always bad. A number of clients I work with love having jobs that, they have a crisis, like say an emergency room doctor or tech. You just move from thing to thing and you don't have a chance to procrastinate. Um, so one way, a strategy, a tool for your toolbox might be to create a crisis. For instance, if your goal, going back to our one goal, might be to have a clean house, you might want to invite people over, say every 2 weeks, to help you stay on track to have a clean house. Because mostly when people have people come over, they tend to pick things up and put things away. So what if every 2 weeks or every week you invite someone over to help you with that crisis? Because then it would be a mini crisis. It would be smaller and easier to do. And then you would have a clean house more frequently. I do know one client, this was a little funny. The husband had told the wife that he was bringing people home from the office. He had company coming. And, could she please, clean the house and have dinner ready? So the woman went absolutely nuts, crazy, cleaning everything up. He came home empty, nobody with him. And she said, "Where's the company?" I said, "Me. I'm the company." He said, "I just wanted a clean house." So again, create a crisis could work. If we go back to taxes, for instance, you could set up an appointment with a tax professional by, say, March 1st. And then that way you would be collecting the info sooner. And so that then becomes your new deadline. And if you did something like, say, an H&R Block, you actually can upload information as you complete it. So if you were working on it in chunks, every time you did a chunk, you could upload it and it would be there. So again, these might be ideas to create deadlines so that you can avoid a major crisis. So again, create short-term deadlines. It also really, really helps if you can identify an accountability partner to help you meet your deadlines. So whether that's if you have a colleague at work, if you have a friend, if you have a partner, partners can be tricky because you don't want somebody who's going to be critical. But again, identify somebody, and it could be a coach, somebody you hire to help you meet your deadlines. But again, find someone to help hold you accountable. That you can work with that doesn't make you feel crappy if you don't hit your goal. So again, whoever the person is, if you don't hit your goal, they need to say something like, "Okay, so what got in your way? What can you do differently? What do you want to try this time? But again, sort of process it with you instead of adding to all the negative self-talk. All right, leading right up into self-talk. Again, cognitive behavior therapy, love cognitive behavior therapy. Reframing self-talk. What you tell yourself or what others tell you matter. It's been said that it takes 7 positive comments to neutralize 1 negative comment. So again, if you tell yourself, this will take forever, I hate doing this, I'm a failure, your brain hears that and then it starts to believe the messages. But what if we reframed it instead of this will take forever? I can do this one small step at a time. Okay, that gives you hope. And it's true. You don't want to do something artificial. But yeah, you can do one small step. I hate doing this. It's like, okay, I don't like doing this, but it's important because, and what's your why? Why are you doing whatever it is? Why do you want to do it? Or I'm just a failure. Okay, so I have challenges. I'm going to use my tools. I'm going to develop some strategies, structures, and supports, and I can do this. Or I can get somebody else to do this. Again, I can barter or hire or trade to get it done. So you can be creative. And ADHD and creativity, oh my goodness. There's no end to the creative solutions people have come up with. All right, now we have be kind to yourself. A lot of people with ADHD don't do something sometimes because they're afraid they can't do it perfectly. So if you can't do it perfectly, then it stops people from doing something. So it's important to let go of perfection because it can rob you of actually getting something done. Also, a lot of people with ADHD may struggle with anxiety. So again, what you tell yourself has a lot to play into being anxious and depressed. If you have medication, use it as prescribed to help you stay on track. If your medication doesn't help you do that, you may want to get the medication tweaked. One of the most common problems I have with people I work with is their medication isn't optimized. It may be the wrong dose for them. It may be the timing of it. It may be the type of medication. Again, there's a number of medications. There's a number of ways to take them. There's a number of doses. And then if you really want to be creative, there could be polypharmacy, where they add a little bit for something for anxiety as well as this. Again, there's a lot of options. Many people fail to optimize. So that's going to be important. If you use medication and it's not helping you, keep trying. There might be something out there that could work for you better. Also, there was a coach that I worked with who said, if you wouldn't hire you to do it, you probably shouldn't do it. And the main concept was, in fact, he gave you 1 point for doing a task, but he gave you 2 points for delegating it and having somebody else do it or do a part of it. Oh, I think it was 2 points if you delegated a part of it and 3 points if you delegated the whole task. So the idea was, if it's something that's not in your strength wheelhouse, but it needs to get done, can you delegate, barter, trade, get somebody to do part of it? I had a guy who was great at sales, incredible at filling out the expense reports, and would procrastinate like crazy over the expense sheets. So he ended up hiring somebody who collected all his expense sheets and put it into the report. It would have taken him probably 6 hours to do it because he hated it and procrastinated. He hired somebody and it cost him $12 for the person to input the info for an hour. So again, see if there's a better way to do something so that you don't procrastinate. And again, you may want to hire a coach. If you hire a coach, I would advise you to hire somebody who specializes in ADHD. Regular coaching strategies often don't work with ADHD. They tend to offer detailed, linear kind of strategies that often aren't the best for someone with a brain that works a little differently. But again, you can hire an ADHD coach to help you develop your own personal toolbox and tweak it. And the good thing is, once you have your toolbox, you can be using that throughout the rest of your life in all sorts of different situations, with just some occasional tweaks now and then. So again, don't be afraid to hire somebody to help. It could save you a ton of time. You can use visual cues to help you stay on track. Be realistic, small chunks. That's going to be important. Remember, baby steps. And also reward yourself for your successes. And they might be a small step. You might set the timer for 5 minutes to clean out your closet. And no, your closet isn't going to be all clean in 5 minutes, but if you did a chunk, celebrate your successes. Again, what you tell yourself matters, so be kind to yourself. So to sort of loop back, the new year is a good time to sort of do a fresh start and to look at things a little differently, try some different things. So the first thing is to realize you're not alone. Again, procrastination's been around a really long time. 1588 was the first recorded one they've caught that used the term. I'm sure it began way before then. So you're not alone. But also realize that you have a bigger burden than the neurotypicals, because a neurotypical has regular procrastination. I prefer not to do something, but I have to do it. With ADHD, you have a brain that gets easily distracted. Bright, shiny objects, noises, different things can lure you off track much easier. And it's much harder to get back on track. So you actually have to work harder and more diligently to help combat and fight procrastination. So just know that it's there, but also it's not hopeless. Again, with the right tools, you can do things. You can get things done. It just might look different. But what you tell yourself actually matters. Whether you beat yourself up for procrastinating, whether you tell yourself you can't possibly do something, watch what you tell yourself and start talking more nicely to yourself. I had one guy, and our goal for that week was to say 7 positives every time he did a negative self-talk. So he came back the next week, and I always ask what's worked well, what successes, and he said, well, I couldn't tell myself 7 good things. It's like, all right, so how was that a positive? He said, I stopped talking to myself. It was cheaper. So again, he had a harder time coming up with positives, but he was able to cut off the negatives, and that helped him. So now we come to the point where we can hear what your survey results are, and we can start to address any of the questions or thoughts that you may have. So open that back up.
Thank you. Thank you for that really helpful talk. And now we'll share the final results from today's poll question. Which of the following strategies have you tried to combat procrastination? Here's what you said. 22.5% said they break tasks down into smaller steps. 20.8% said they create a timeline or deadline. 17.4% said they rely on external tools such as alarms and productivity apps. 14% say they minimize distractions. 12% say they use rewards or do something to increase task appeal. 10.4% say they reframe negative self-talk. So there you have it. Now on to your questions from our audience. We have lots of great questions and some from coaches as well. So our first question is, how can I get to bed at a reasonable hour instead of stealing quote unquote me time and watching Netflix or scrolling through social media when really I should be in bed and asleep?
Yeah, a lot of times not going to sleep and winding down is such an ADHD problem. Uh, so it starts with probably use of maybe alarms to turn the TV off, but you also have to find something else to do during the time. So it's not just stopping one behavior, but it's finding a better preferred behavior. So they say that you're supposed to limit screen time at least an hour before bedtime. Uh, I also strongly suggest do not watch one of the Netflix series, especially at nighttime, because they always leave you at the cliffhanger and then you want to watch the next part. So it's important not to get hooked into something. So an hour before you want to go to bed, it would be good if an alarm went off for you to turn off screens and then do something else. This is a great time to say exercise, to stretch, to read, uh, to come up with your goals for what you want to be doing, to work on a project, to clean a drawer out. But come up with something non-techy to do an hour before it's time to go to bed. And then you might have an easier time going to bed, or even bring something into bed to do with you. Like bring a book into bed with you to read for a bit before you turn out the lights. Um, but there are apps that will turn off your TV as well so that you can't watch it. But again, I think it starts with not getting started. So if it's, say, you want to be in bed by 11 o'clock and there's a 2-hour Netflix movie that you start to turn on at 10, thinking you'll watch the other part of it later, don't do it. Just make sure that you free up that hour before bed to do something non-screen time so that you can go to sleep easier. So that tends to be the first strategy to start with.
Okay. We had quite a few people who said that they were diagnosed with ADHD at older ages, in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, even. And they say that as they get older, their procrastination seems to get a little bit worse. And so I have one woman who says that her home is a disaster. She says, I'm later than ever for things. I'm behind in my work. I'm overwhelmed, anxious, and stressed. I make a plan and then I suffer from paralysis. How can I get out of this vicious cycle? But then we've also had people ask about task initiation. So is this task initiation how to get out of this cycle, or is this something else altogether?
Um, well, for the one lady that's struggling in all the areas,
Yeah.
that might be big to tackle on your own. And I'm not sure what's going on. But again, cognitively, we do slow down as we get older. And so different coping skills that used to work may not work as well. But if somebody is totally flooded with overwhelm, that's a lot. Um, and that person may benefit from, talking with their doctor, finding a coach to just start digging out. If that's not desired, then again, I would start super small. What is one thing that that person could do where they can say, all right, the whole house is trashed, but at least I can look in my kitchen drawer and this one's organized, and just start small, chunking it away. Or this may be a case where she could barter with somebody, or if finances are available, hiring a professional organizer. They can come in and help you organize all sorts of things amazingly quick. In less than half a day, most of professional organizing teams can get your garage cleaned out and organized. It's absolutely amazing what can be done. So again, that person may need help in getting there. But again, it might be medical, it could be physical, and it could just be an accumulation. But if the person wanted to start without help, I would suggest find something super small and get success in the one area. And even like the clothing app I talked about for, helping you. If you have your clothes ready to go, you don't have to decide what fits, what can I wear. You're going to wear 2 of the 27 things in your closet. That makes it super simple. So maybe simplifying things could help as well. And then you had a second question just about
Well, so about task initiation. She makes plans, but then she gets paralyzed. But we've also had other people ask about how they struggle with task initiation, and that it takes a toll on their everyday tasks and lives, and how can they overcome that?
Well, I think probably all the strategies we talk about are a lot about initiation, but the key ones for initiation specifically would be set a timer for something super small, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, one of those two time periods, and agree to start just that one little time period. And most people can do that. Um, I know if somebody was talking about like flossing their teeth and they didn't want to do it. So a coach had told them floss one tooth, just do one small tiny piece, and that usually starts things going. And again, check the preferred time, the time you tend to work best. Make sure it's during your preferred time if you can, but start super duper small. Say you had to write a report. There's like a sloppy first draft where if you look at a blank screen or a blank piece of paper, it's hard to get started. But even if you just write crap, right, like 5 sentences of gibberish, then you start to edit. And edit is actually easier than creating. So again, do something, start somewhere. And if you can't, the body double works really, really well. I had one person who used a stuffed animal as their body double, and they put their stuffed animal by their door as a guard to make sure they stayed there and stayed on task. Another one too, I did this with my dissertation. I didn't want to write I wanted to do it. Well, no, I guess I didn't. I had to do the dissertation to get my doctorate degree. And so a group of us, I think it was like, I forget, like a Monday or whatever, but we left the whole afternoon, had to be our dissertation and only our dissertation. We could not cook during that time. We couldn't eat during the time. We could go to the bathroom. But other than that, we had to sit at a table working on our dissertation or do nothing at all. And we sort of all made that pact. And I remember at my kitchen table one time, and I really just did not feel like working. So I sat there, and I knew I wasn't allowed to do something else. So I sat there and sat there and sat there. Finally, after like 35 minutes, it's like, well, this is really stupid. I'm going to have to sit here for 3 more hours. I might as well at least work on footnotes, and so I picked something small and started. So again, to initiate, if you sort of give yourself an ultimatum, sometimes that can help. Also, I bribed myself with Dippin' Chips back in the day too.
Someone writes, how can I maintain motivation when something stops feeling like a novelty and it isn't urgent?
That's a whole different talk. Sustaining activities. Most people with ADHD do really well at the beginning of a task, but find it harder to persevere. Again, the beginning part of a task tends to involve creativity, energy. It's exciting, it's new. Sustaining it puts it more in the boring, dull category. I had a set of clients who came in, and they were working together and they were doing stock things. And the one guy was great at leads and starting things, but he never finished them. He wouldn't follow up with people in timely manner. And his partner was this detailed linear machine person who would start a task, work on it, finish it, boom. So she was a machine. So I remember talking to him, and it's like, I'm thinking he's probably better at starting tasks than you are. He's probably better at identifying leads, getting people excited and all that. She went, yeah, but he doesn't finish them. I was like, all right, so I'm guessing it doesn't matter to you if you start, work on, or finish. And I said, what if you guys trade it off? Let him start them. And then when he gets bored, see if he can pass it on to somebody else. They did that, and they like tripled their income because he got to work on the preferred tasks. My son was working in a computer place, and they would put tasks on a board when they got tired of working on them so somebody else could grab it. So, because it would be somebody else's new task. If not, if you can't trade it off the parts that you don't like or don't want to do, again, you have to go back to your why. Why is it important for you to do this? What'll happen if you don't? How will you feel if you did? Um, so again, sustaining, also scheduling time for the task, and maybe adding exercise to try to help keep you motivated might help too. But yeah, sustaining a task is a whole hard thing as well.
We had a few people ask about brown noise, or how colors of noise, white noise, brown noise, might help people with ADHD get things done. Can you talk more about that?
I don't know much about that, but I do know that the different colors of noise do have different, they impact different parts of your brain. So part of it would be trying. I know there's like purple noise, red. Yeah, there's all sorts of different apps that have different noises. So I don't know specifically what might help. If there's somebody listening who knows, please pop that over. But again, different noise levels can help different brain functions. That much I do know, but I don't know which colors do what.
Mhm. Someone writes, at what point do you need to evaluate whether there's a bigger issue than procrastination? I'm always procrastinating on certain tasks at work, and maybe it means I'm not in the correct line of work. I'm trying to determine if I just need to put more effort into combating procrastination or if there's another line of work I might enjoy more.
Ah, that's a big question. Um, can't answer that question directly, but maybe if that person tries some of the procrastination strategies, um, we can see, because people with ADHD can even procrastinate on things they like to do and that they're good at. So just because you procrastinate doesn't mean you're not suited for it. It could be that day, that time, you just didn't feel like it. There was something else shiny that sort of grabbed your attention. But if you always procrastinate, if you always dread the different tasks, um, if there's no part of your job that excites you, then it may be time to look at, again, a different career or a different part within the line of work that you're in. What is it that does light you up? The ideal job is one that you don't feel like you're working that much at. It's just something that sort of goes with your strengths, if you can ever find something like that. So again, for that person, it might be good to try some of the strategies we talked about, see if that helps, and maybe make a list of pros and cons. I like these things about my job, and then also, what are the things that you don't procrastinate on? Because those things may be more in line with what your natural skill set is, and that bring you joy and happiness. And again, that might be a good question to go over with a coach or a counselor too, to sort of evaluate, are you where you're supposed to be? Or do you just need better tools to do your job more effectively? Like now as they're doing construction around here, they're not using regular hammers. They're using these high-powered little guns. So, sometimes there's different tools you can use that make a job go much quicker, much easier. So if you have the right tools to manage ADHD, it might be better. Um, so that's just a possibility. So.
Mhm. You had talked about the idea of, or letting go of the idea of perfection. And we had a few people ask, how might you go about letting go of the idea of perfection?
Uh, the biggest thing is to realize that nothing is perfect. Because a lot of people hold up the goal that, this must be perfect or else. So part of it's examining the what about the or else. I know in the Amish culture, I love quilts and needlework. They usually start with a mistake. So then they don't have the pressure of being perfect for the rest of the project because they've already had a mistake. So that one's taken care of. But again, a lot of this involves self-talk. Some things do need to be done exactly right, but many of the things that we do don't have to be exactly right. And sometimes there's not even an exactly right. Like, a house doesn't have to be clean enough to eat off the floors. It needs to be good enough. So part of perfectionism is coming up with what's good enough and what's over the top. So letting go of these idealistic goals of unrealism. And that's where social media really takes us down a rabbit hole because, everybody shows the best of the best and they edit things and they can have a half-eaten apple and you won't see the backside of the apple. You only see the shiny, pretty part. So I think a lot of our culture leads us to believe that everybody else has this all together. So part of it is just come up with something realistic and see to what level something needs to be done, because not everything needs to be done 100% accurate. Most things need to be done, maybe 80% is often good enough for a lot of things. So discerning what has to be done better and what things can be done, more or less okay. But again, a lot of that could be in the cognitive behavioral therapy, the self-talk, what you tell yourself. A lot of us tend to put up a plastic facade, because we think that's what everybody wants to see. I know one time somebody came to my house and it was trashed. I forget how many days worth of laundry all over the place, piled up, and I had just had a kid and it was just a mess. And I remember somebody came over and went, "Oh, thank goodness I'm not the only one." And they felt so relieved that I had shared, that no, I don't live in a Martha Stewart house. Occasionally I do, but not often. But yeah, so I think if people stop being plasticky and just start to be more real and hang out with people, especially socially if you can, that accept you for who you are and you don't have to put up that facade. That helps with perfectionism a lot. Just be real.
Well, unfortunately, that has to be the last question and answer because we're out of time. But we thank you so much for joining us today and for contributing your expertise to this ADHD community. Next Wednesday, our free webinar is titled Motivating the Unmotivated, Strategies for Middle and High School Students with ADHD with Dr. Sharon Saline. We hope you can join us. Make sure not to miss future ADDitude webinars, articles, or research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. Thank you all so much.